we are back, and we just came back from the theater. Shout out to the Epic Theater in Fort Lee. Woo woo. Best people, best experience, good food.
And drinks.
Drinks, too.
Adult beverages.
Yes. And the folks at City Perch for my gin and tonic. We're talking about Dune Part 2, released this year, PG-13, a runtime of 2 hours and 46 minutes. And I'm going to say that I felt like 2 hours and 46 minutes. You know, it's kind of funny. I forced you to watch the first one again just for, I guess, background.
Yeah, so refresh ourselves.
As a refresher, if you want to check out the first Dune that came out a couple years back, that is, I believe, streaming on Max. So you can check it out there. That one is 2 hours and 35 minutes. So not much of a difference. This one's like about 10 minutes long, but it just felt so much longer.
You know what? We discussed this earlier, but the first time we watched Dune Part 1 at home, it felt incredibly long too. In fact, in the first review, we remarked constantly at how long the movie felt. Yet, when we just watched it today to refresh ourselves on it, it breezed by so fast.
Why is that? Why do you think that is?
In my mind, my theory was because we've watched the David Lynch version of Dune,
which is still the gold standard.
It's just an epic disaster of a masterpiece.
Stop talking. Get to your point.
Come on.
Get to your point.
We've watched it so many times.
Get to your point.
We are familiar with like certain plot points in the story of Dune that when we were watching the Denis how do you say his last name? Villeneuve? Dune Part 1, we were just sort of like waiting for these plot points to happen. He takes his time to tell his story.
He's very,
He gets a lot of details in, and he's also showing you a lot of beautiful footage and detailed costuming and great special effects. So basically, we're like, when's he going to bite on his tooth and try and kill Baron Harkonnen? Takes forever. When's he going to save all the people from the sandworm? Takes forever. All of these things that we have watched ad nauseum, because we seriously have watched that David Lynch version of Dune.
Oh.
I can't even. I don't even know how many times I've seen it. I've seen it that many times. If it's on at like midnight, I'll end up just sitting on the couch and watching the whole damn thing because it's so ridiculous.
It's not ridiculous. It's cinema.
It is.
Stop talking.
So now having watched Dune Part 1 a second time this afternoon before we saw this one, I feel like it breezed by because we knew what to expect. And I'm wondering if in, say, 6 months or so, if we revisit Dune Part 2, will it zip by as quickly?
I'm willing to put this theory to the test. In 6 months, we should definitely rewatch it.
When this comes to streaming, let's watch it again
and force the children to watch it.
See if we feel that it was as long, because I remember that was our big complaint with the first one. It was very slow paced. There was so many shots of ships landing in slow motion and ramps coming down real slow and people staring at each other. And there's a lot of atmosphere.
Yes, for sure.
And this one, they keep up that type of storytelling. Tons of atmosphere. The world is already built. There's still world building to do, but there's not so much heavy lifting in this one. This one, we get more into the story of Paul. The film is basically the choice that he has to make of whether to, I guess, be Paul, the man, or be Muad'Dib, the Messiah.
Right.
And what that will lead to, which in the real world, religious fanaticism is never a good thing. Never.
And I like how it's addressed here.
Yeah, even though in this, like, this is the start of it, and you're fighting for freedom, you're fighting against some pretty evil dudes, it's going to help out. Is it going to be sunshine and rainbows, or is it going to be holy war where people are just going to get slaughtered because they don't think Paul is a God figure, which generally happens with religious maniacs. What do you mean you don't believe in my God?
Right.
Off with your head.
Yeah. I think the first one it starts with Chani, Zendaya's character, kind of giving us an intro about how the Harkonnen or Harkonnen came into to Arrakis and just did their thing, and just
the Harkonnen are very brutal,
right, and came and just basically to enrich themselves. I think it's mentioned like 80 years they've been there harvesting those spice and just
slaughtering the Fremen.
Slaughtering the Fremen and just making money hand over fist over there. So in this one, we open up and the Emperor's daughter, played by Florence Pugh, is our sort of gateway character to the action happening in this part.
She narrates certain parts of the story. No, she's not really an overall narrator for this. It's kind of weird how it's like it's strange that her character is given this position as a narrator when she's really tangential to the entire story. And I mean like loosely tangential. She's not really a major character. Maybe if and when they make a third Dune Part 3, she'll be more a character in the movie as opposed to just basically just a prop.
Maybe. I mean,
but as it is right now, it is a bit of a strange choice. And I'm guessing this is something that's from the book. I never read the book because in the David Lynch version, that character is also a narrator, even though they have absolutely nothing to do with the story.
Well, I mean, where this story is headed is kind of interesting because here's a man that has to decide whether he has to follow this path, which inevitably is going to lead to absolute destruction and death, but it's what's expected of him, or does he forge his own path and be his own man, and I guess in the process also disrupt things and maybe not, I guess, take care of things the way they're supposed to be taken care of, which is why I'm assuming he makes the choices that he does towards the end of the film. And let me start off by saying that it's a very beautiful movie. The performances are all great, even the characters that aren't on the screen for very long. However, much like the first Dune, I think that 2 hours and 46 minutes is a lot when it's, like you said, a slower paced film and there's still a lot of introductions. They introduced Austin Butler's character and stuff. So there's still a lot of, not exactly world building, but you have to introduce these characters because they serve a purpose in this story, right? So you're going to, I don't want to say waste time. That's not how I want it to seem, but I understand why Denis did what he did. I think watching the film, it makes sense. I think the choices that he made sense. I feel like there were things in the film that I would have cut down or maybe changed, but looking at this piece, at this particular film, at this particular storytelling experience, I think it's still valid. It's still good. I just feel like I like the first part a little bit better. And I think it's because the world building there made sense because it is the first time that you're seeing these characters and getting to know them. And if you compare it to, I guess, the source material, you know what? There was a point, I don't know if we've discussed this. I think maybe we have. When I was younger, I wanted to read all the classics. So I would go to the library and take out books. And I believe Dune was at one point one of the books that I took out. I don't know if I finished it. I think I read maybe 60% of the book. So some of this still sort of resonated, but for the most part, I mean, if I read the book, it would probably be like reading it with fresh eyes. So I'd be curious to incorporate that as well into the viewing experience, just to see how much is faithful to the original source, how much has changed, why it's changed maybe, and to sort of understand. Because obviously, as a filmmaker, you have to take liberties, especially with a source material that's so complex, that's so vast. I think you have to take shortcuts unless you're doing like a mini series, which would probably make more sense with a source material this big and vast and varied. But whatever, just going by this particular film, I liked it. I feel like I liked the first one still more, but I liked it, and I think that the good outweighs the bad for me. I think for the good, I would say the performances are all great. It was great to see these characters again. They're endearing. Paul, I think, is great. I think Timothée Chalamet does a really great job. He's a little bit different in this one. I think in the first one, he's still sort of young and naive and whatever, doesn't understand like politics. And in this one, he's more sure-footed, although he still wrestles with certain decisions. But it was nice to see that, because even though these people are putting him in sort of like a god status, he's still a man with flaws and layered and complex, and still trying to walk a good path and be a good person.
Yeah, and in the beginning, he's not egging them on. They're saying all this stuff, and he is constantly saying, "I am not your leader.
I'm not your leader, right?
I just want to fight with you. Fight as one of you."
Right. In which case, some of them, not all of them, take it as, he's very humble.
Yeah, a lot of them are like, humble. Oh, the Mahdi will always be humble.
Right.
So pretty much every decision he makes for some people is just further proof that he is this Messiah figure. Yeah, Kwisatz Haderach.
Well, no, that's the thing that his mother calls him. What do they call him? Lisan
al-Gaib or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely not leaning into it at all. And that the thing that's funny is like his mother and another figure from the past that shows up. They're like, "What are you doing, man?
Use this to your advantage.
Use this to your advantage. You could totally take over, get revenge for your family and your father. These people worship you. They are in love with you.
They're ready to die for you.
They will absolutely die for you."
Well,
and he really does not want to do that. And like Chani is with him on that. Chani is not a true believer in the slightest. She's like, that's for those people down south, people in the southern part of Arrakis. They're all a bunch of religious kooks.
Nuts. Yeah.
I'm just fighting for the freedom of my planet. And Paul, like it or not, he is this thing.
Yeah.
So he's having these dreams, these visions, and the thing is that every time he sees himself, I guess, going south and accepting this mantle of godhood or whatever, there is just so much death, and all he sees is death and starvation and people suffering all around him. So he obviously, it's just further proof that this is something that he should not be embracing.
Right.
But it's sort of like things progress in the film where it sort of like forces his hand, and it's his fate or destiny, and it's something that he must do. And they sort of like almost like pin it in a way, well, you know what? If you do the thing that might make you this guy, you'll have a better world view of everything, and you'll be able to make a more informed decision. It's kind of like a trap, though.
Right.
But it's a trap that he has to go into, because there's really no alternative, because the threat has elevated. Where once the threat was the beast Rabban, now the threat is Faye Rautha.
Right.
And Rautha is just a more cunning, ruthless. Well, I mean, they're both pretty ruthless, but Rabban is more. He's not as smart. He's sort of like a guy who he's the guy. He's definitely more of a brute, and he's the guy who's his idea of problem solving is, okay, well, there they are, hit that spot. Well, there they are, hit that spot. There.
He's not strategic.
Basically, he's just reacting.
Yeah.
Whereas Fade comes in and is just like, well, where could these guys be? Okay, do this instead.
Right.
And he actually goes out and he takes care of the issue. He's not waiting for something bad to happen before it happens. So he's definitely got more strategic minded, and it makes more sense because Fade is a product of the same genetic manipulations of the Bene Gesserit that produced Paul. He's almost like an anti-Paul.
Yes. And he definitely has more of a part to play in this particular story. So it was interesting to see that character fleshed out.
I feel like you waited a real long time before they even showed him.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that was an issue of pacing as well, because there was a lot, there really was a lot going on that they could have either combined or condensed to make this a bit of a quicker pace. They probably could have shaved some time off with that.
What about the beginning, where there's just a lot of lull kind of conversations and, I guess, stakeouts?
Yeah, that's another thing. I think I mentioned it in the first review. You got to have that hook that brings you in, that's like, oh my God, look at that happen. And then you start getting into the story. It seems like Denny he's not into the hook thing. I'm going to tell you a long story, and you got to promise to sit and listen to the whole thing. You'll probably be happy with it when it's done.
Right.
But it might not grab you in that first 5 minutes. I'm not going to like wow you in those first 5 minutes.
Right.
That seems to be
his calling card.
His calling card, because the first one is the same. The first and the second one, the pacing's very similar, and that's why, I mean, you say you like the first one more. I gotta be honest, I can't really say I like one more than the other. And like, compared to the viewing that I saw of the first one today, since it moved so much faster, I would say, oh yeah, I like the first one better. But I don't know if it's just the same thing when if I watch this movie again in 6 months and it goes by so quickly that I'm like, wow, that was just great. I may like this one more.
I think my problem with this one is just that there were parts and segments of the movie that could have been tightened up. I felt like it was too sprawling.
We felt, that's the thing though, we felt the same about it the first one. There were so many things we felt could have been tightened, and then we watched it today, and they didn't bother us at all.
No, it didn't. It was just so weird, wasn't it?
I really feel,
am I watching the same film?
I really feel it's because we aren't going into the unknown when we see it on a second time, so that we're waiting for certain things to happen that we know are going to happen.
Right.
Because we watched the David Lynch one so many times, and David Lynch was just like, here's this, here's this, here's this. Here's this weirdness, and here's more weirdness, and you didn't think that was weird enough? Here's some more. Well, this guy's got to milk a cat. He's got to milk a cat to survive. What the hell was that scene? Like, why was that even in there?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that, again, you make fun of 84 Dune, but I feel like some of the choices here are like debatable. I don't know if I mentioned that before, but there was definitely parts in the first part of the story where I would have definitely edited some of that down, because I think it's just too much. And then I don't know. I think with the introduction of Faye, I don't know if I would have gone into all of that. I really like Lynch's version because he's not a big character.
Honestly, he is probably the weakest point in that entire movie, because he's supposed to be a more major character and he's not. He just appears in that weird steam shower in his like crazy underwear. Oh, he's holding the cat that the guy has to milk. And then there's the final scene where he's got to fight Paul.
Yeah.
Oh, and one thing that the David Lynch film is incredibly superior into this one is in the original Patrick Stewart.
Oh yes, now
he's like, let me fight this Harkonnen animal. I love his enunciation of the word animal.
And I love Josh Brolin, but he didn't really.
He cannot
Patrick
say that.
Stewart.
No, he's not touching Patrick Stewart's shoe. He's just blown away. Just seriously, the way he says animal. I love that.
So I think if you've read the books or have some insight into the original source material, you know kind of some of the things that happen and what characters they happen to. I still, again, I didn't hate it. It's just, I feel like it went on way longer than it should have, and I feel like they could have really condensed it so that you don't really go into too much of the backstory, because the stuff that was long for me was like intro stuff, or what's the word I'm looking for? Filler kind of things. It wasn't the meat and potatoes of the story. So, I mean, it's still worthwhile to watch. I think if you're a filmmaker or a film student, you should absolutely watch this. The cinematography is lovely. The effects work is really well done. The performances, all of them, again, I think, like I said before, whether they're some of the heavier hitters in the story, like Paul, like Chani, like Lady Jessica even, it was nice. I feel like she got more of a nod this time too, and her character's a little bit more fleshed out more so than
she's
usual.
a major force in this movie.
She is definitely a major character in this, which she really wasn't in the previous one. I mean, she's important, but not as important as she is here. And it was good to see Rebecca Ferguson kind of fill in and handle her business and really put in the work and do just a really great job with it. If I was going to give it a number from 1 to 10, I think I would give this one a 6. Again, I think I like the first one a little bit more, but who knows? I think I agree with you. I'd love to run this experiment and see in 6 months or whenever it hits the streamers just what's different, what's the same, and what can be made better. It's still a great film, though.
If you were to rate part 1 again, having seen it this afternoon, what would you give it?
I still like the first one better, so I'd probably give that one like a 7.
You gave it a 7 when you thought it was too long.
Even though I thought it was long, I still liked it a lot, and I was still impressed with a lot of...
That's what I'm saying. You wouldn't change your score having watched it now and not thinking it's too long.
No, because I think to me, it wasn't too long. I think when we looked at the first one, I kind of took into... I factored in the kids' kind of dislike for the film because to them it was just too long, right? And I think that they weren't really interested. They didn't care. So it wasn't really something, I mean, that's more for me, right? And I think that trying to be objective about it, I think when I reviewed that film, I wanted to take all those things into consideration because I think it should play a part in the ultimate scoring of a film. You should look at all of it and just make a decision based off that. And having said that, I think that this one is still lovely. It's still good. The script is tight. I mean, obviously he loves Herbert's novel and is faithful to the accuracy of it. But I think even though we've mentioned this in the past, that the new standard for film length is about 2 hours, this goes over that. This is almost a 3-hour mark, right? And I think that audiences still aren't going to be okay with that. And especially with something that's so a specialized story, it is hard sci-fi. It's not just fun.
It's not Guardians.
It's not Guardians. I was going to say it's not Galaxy Quest. There's high stakes stuff happening in this, right? And I think that while Denis is a great director and tells a really great story, I think where it suffers is that it just moves too slowly. And I think that some of the stuff could have been condensed to either focus on other parts of the story or just to condense them, right? I think you and I have had that conversation before where filmmakers, I'm sure, take offense about notes about cutting their film because it's their project. So it feels like so many people are invested in this project. The Herbert fans, the fans of Dune, the really diehard sci-fi nerds who don't appreciate too much variation from source materials. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of people that will weigh in and maybe affect how people see the film. But I think for the most part, Denis does an excellent job with Dune. I don't begrudge him that. And I think that whatever numbers this film's making, whatever success he's having, good for him, because I think this was a passion project and a labor of love for this guy. He didn't have to do this. He could have just walked away after collecting his monies the last time, but he didn't. I think he's really committed to the film and the story and the legacy of Dune and wants to add to that. It's kind of ballsy if you think about it, to take something that's already out there and think that you're going to make it better. And in some respects, Denis does make it better. There are parts of this Dune incarnation that I love even more than Lynch's. But to me, the nostalgia factor and having grown up at the time and seeing that in the theater the way I did with my family, it doesn't matter. Dune 84 is always going to win in my book. So
it's just so ridiculous.
It's really not. It's cinema. It's cinema. Get it through your head.
You keep lying.
How dare you?
Back to what we were originally doing. I'll give this one a 7. I gave the other one a 7 and this one a 7 too. Mm-hmm. So,
well, you did say that you didn't like one more or less than the other, so they're both equal.
And I gotta be honest, I'm interested to see what'll happen
in 6 months.
This thing gets streamed.
Yeah, you know what?
Will the
feel
pacing
as tiresome?
Feel a little bit faster, will my opinion change? I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. But I still think on the positive for this film, right?
Yeah,
Like if
I'm not saying.
somebody said to you, "Hey, should I go see-"
seven is a good number. It
But if
basically,
somebody
it's
said
just.
to you, "I haven't seen it," and you've seen it,
I would
you
say.
recommend
I would say
it?
it's good, but it's long.
Fair.
That's
Fair enough.
all.
Fair
That's
enough.
all I will say. It's good,
Yeah.
but it's long.
Yeah.
Don't drink a lot before you go to see it.
Well, you didn't read any of the books, right? You said.
No.
First question: do you think that people will get upset if there are an egregious amount of reimaginings, shall we say, of the story?
I think we talked about this a little. Dune doesn't have that kind of fan base, or at least I'm not seeing them online. Like say Star Wars or Star Trek. Those people get violent. Like they lose their shit over so much stuff. Wow. Yeah, they get butthurt real bad if something switches. Like when George Lucas started making his little improvements. I mean, even I dislike that, but I'm not like at the point where I'm ready to just start stabbing
Boycotting
people.
it.
Or boycotting or getting mad about how things have changed. Even like I just hated the prequels for Star Wars.
Yeah, they weren't good.
But when I look back and I see the type of people who liked that, I'm like, they were kids when they saw Phantom Menace and all those movies, so they have a fondness for those things. And I think that's the thing. I think back and I'm like, I was a kid when I saw Star Wars and Empire and Jedi. Yeah. And if I was an adult, maybe I wouldn't have given two shits about those movies. It's not for me anymore. That's the thing. You have these like big, sweaty, fat guys who are just like, you're ruining it, man. You're ruining it. And it's just like,
shut your pie
maybe
hole.
You just need to sit down, think for a minute, and realize it's not for you anymore.
Right.
It's not for you anymore. Like I saw some like little clip, one of those goddamn YouTube shorts goddamn YouTube shorts. I hate YouTube shorts because I watch one and suddenly I'm watching 50.
50. I know.
And it shows this little girl at Disneyland dressed up like Rey.
Okay. Got it.
And at some sort of Imperial March parade, and there's the stormtroopers walking, and she's like putting her hand up like she's using the Force, and they walk by, and Darth Vader walks by, and all the Star Wars characters walk by, and then the girl dressed up like Rey walks up and gives her a hug, and I'm just like, that's who it's for.
Yeah,
that little kid. Yeah. It's not for me anymore. And if you're like, I will agree with you 100%. The films that came after, the more recent ones since The Force Awakens,
trash.
They've got some serious issues in them. They've got some major problems in them. But I'm an adult man. I'm an adult man. This movie wasn't made for me.
Right.
They could have been nice and put some shit in there for me. I got to like hunt for it. But for the most part, it's for that little girl dressed up like Rey at Disneyland.
Yeah.
Getting the hug. And that's it. Dune doesn't have that kind of fan base because, let's be honest, there's nothing fun or cute about Dune.
The story, yeah.
It's an ugly story about people murdering each other because they have different names and religion and religious fanaticism.
It's funny because it's sort of like a template to a lot that happens in this day and age.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, that's what hard sci-fi is. It's a mirror on our current world shown in some sort of fantastical setting, and this is exactly it. This is just a story about the perils of this kind of fanaticism, and you're thinking, oh, this he's going to be the hero, but he is no longer this. I hope he's the underdog. I hope he's like all those guys. Kill all those guys.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting.
That was It wasn't even like give them a chance or send them on their way. Kill those guys.
Yeah.
And now they're going to attack me from space, or we're going up. We're going to kill those guys too.
Yeah.
We're going to kill everybody.
The threat. Yeah.
If they don't believe, if they don't accept my reign as the emperor, everybody dies.
Yeah.
Sorry if that's a spoiler. It's at the end of the review. So. But anyway, yeah, Dune doesn't have that sort of fan base.
Yeah.
People will bitch about anything.
Anything and everything.
I mean, even in this movie, they'll probably be like, oh, I thought the cod pieces were inauthentic.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, fine.
Come on.
Yeah. Maybe Herbert wrote some detailed description of Paul's cod piece and we don't know about it.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to get bent out of shape about it.
Do you think Denis made this film because of his love for Dune, or do you think he also wanted to shine a light on the themes of Dune, which are like political intrigue and to an extent genocide?
Isn't that the same thing? If you love Dune, you love those themes.
Well, I don't know if you love those themes, or
you're fascinated by those themes,
or do you want to shine a light, especially in the current situation that we find ourselves in, and say, I want you as an audience to see this.
You know what? I think I know where you're getting. I think I know what you're getting at. But the problem is, religious fanaticism obviously is a problem.
Yes,
and
something that relates to even now.
It has ravaged a part of our world for centuries now, and it's rearing its head in other parts of society now, including areas over here. Problem is, nobody in that region, like the Middle East or whatever, they're not going to watch Dune. And the people here that
won't make those connections.
They're not going to make that connection to themselves or the political leaders that are taking advantage of that sort of take advantage of that sort of fanaticism, because the characters in Dune clearly are modeled after those people in the Middle East. So they're just going to be like, oh, they're talking about the terrorists. They're not talking about the crazy religious fanatics over here.
Right.
Yeah, that's not them.
Yeah,
these guys got beards and they're living in the desert.
Right. They're
not wearing suits and holding church in an old football stadium.
Yeah.
It's different. He's making Dune. I mean, yeah, those are fascinating topics, and Dune reflects those. It's basically about religious fanaticism and the dangers of this whole Messiah thing. I think Herbert even addressed that himself, like outside, not just in the story, but when he was talking about his own work. So, yeah, I think Denis is just making the movie because obviously he likes the source material, and those themes, yeah, they're relevant today, but I don't think he's trying to shine a light or trying to change anybody's beliefs about it, because the only people that are going to get it are the people that aren't religious fanatics. Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to add? I think we've probably discussed this enough.
Nah. Like I said, it's good, but it's long.
Right.
And maybe on a repeat viewing, it won't be as long. I look forward to seeing that'll happen.
Yes, I agree with you, and I will co-sign on that.
Because to our surprise, Dune Part 1, also good, but very long.
But flew for some reason.
For some reason, on a second viewing, a long time after, because this Part 1 came out, 2021? Yeah. It zipped by when we watched it this afternoon.
Yeah. It's weird how that happened.
Very strange.
Yeah. I mean, I looked at the clock and I was like, yeah, a lot of time did pass by, but sitting on the couch watching that, I didn't feel like it did. Yeah.
All right.
So you said 7, I said 6. I think absolutely. If you are a fan of the Herbert novel, if you are a fan of these actors, I think if you keep current on Denis as a director and his storytelling, absolutely check out Dune. It is massive in scope and does look better in a movie theater.
Yeah, especially when you're being served really nice food and
drink. Yes.
And adult beverages.
Again, shout out to the Epic in Fort Lee. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think story-wise too, I think it's an interesting piece too. But again, I agree with you. It is long. But if you can get to the theater, if not, I'm sure it'll be streaming in a platform.
Probably on Max.
But yeah, I think this is one of those movies that begs to be looked at on a wider screen.
Yeah, it helps.
Yeah. All right, and with that, we are going to bid you all a
Good night.
good night. Long live the fighters.